I'm very glad to be here today, be invited to do this. I'm glad to be here at all, because if I'd kept doing what I was doing, which was a lot of drinking, pills, drugs, and pot and other things, basically anything they put in front of me, I wouldn't be here. I'm sure death or incarceration, insane asylum, some combination of those would have befallen me. I know I'm one of those people that know that I have a genetic predisposition to this stuff, and I have a psychological makeup that makes me, predisposed to wanting to use drugs and alcohol. On the genetic side of things, on the gene side of things, back when they wrote the big book, they referred to it as an allergy. Well, there's been a lot done since then. There's no doubt in my mind, and if you look out there, there's a lot to do with, brain waves, dopamine and serotonin, the chemistry of your brain, even your liver. They know today that some people's liver process alcohol more efficiently than others. And that has a lot to do with the cravings that some people get. So that's come a long way. I know I have the genetic component. My mother had 14 people in her family. She had 12 siblings and her parents, and my father had 9, so 7 kids and parents, so there's 23 of them overall. And if you looked in there was addiction sprinkled throughout that. I had one aunt, she pretty good on guitar, and she'd sit us down as kids, and she used to wear these wigs like Dolly Parton kind of wigs. I'd see her with red hair one day and blonde hair another, and she'd sit us down and play guitar, and we'd sing country tunes and little ditties, and she was really entertaining and chatty. Well, she liked pep pills, I found out later in life. Back then they were prominently called diet pills. They were pep pills. Well, that was one of my aunts. I have an uncle who was a graphic artist, really sharply dressed guy. I can remember him, pleated pants and always had this buttoned up white shirt and full head of hair and horn-rimmed glasses. Really cool guy. He, best of my knowledge, died in Mexico of a heroin overdose. I have an uncle that lived in the woods by himself. He would cut lumber. They would cedar posts, and they would bring him his booze, pay him in booze and food, and pick up the cedar posts. And he died in the woods. Then we had sprinkled in there were the martini contingent. The Tom Collins contingent back then. And then we had the Stroh's beer Goebel long neck contingent. But in there, if you looked at the 23 people, there was quite a bit of that going on. I know that I have a predisposition to this. We used to go to these family parties, and they were big family parties. These people were all real nice, friendly, jovial people. Well, they were just jovial. They were stoned, a lot of them, I think. In their own way. In their own way. But, there were some people in there who were normies. And they just thought the rest of them, you'd hear, oh, Uncle Jim, he likes his stuff too much. But the other thing I inherited from them, which I think was interesting, is they all were good at hiding it. There was never any talk about, addiction or them drinking or drugging or taking pep pills or any of that. They just, and I'm sure I picked up on that. Just put up a good front. Don't talk about it. Now, on the other side of things, that's a genetic part. I have that, but I'm sure I got the psychological makeup as well. I'm an instant gratification person, if you want to call it, a quick fix person when it comes to my mood and things. I didn't know it when I picked it up, but that's me. This is a side note. There was a study done in the early 60s called the Marshmallow Study. Anybody familiar with the Marshmallow Study? Okay, Marshmallow Study. They take 5-year-old kids and they put the kids in a room and they say, if you don't eat this marshmallow, I'll give you 2 when I come back. Well, like 60% of the kids eat the marshmallow within 5 minutes. And a third of them wait to get their reward. And they found out through some serendipity that these kids, these 60%, were the kids that were getting in trouble with booze and alcohol and having trouble in school and things like that. Shit, if I'd been in that study, I would have been hitting the guy up for a dime bag of marshmallows or something. The guy wouldn't have made it out of the room. I mean, I'm sure I'm an instant gratifier of that kind of caliber. I'm sure of that. So how did I come about my stinking thinking? I know that as a kid, I went out into the world with my dial set wrong. When I was 8 years old, if you'd looked at my home life, from the outside, you would have thought it's ideal. Cars in the driveway, nice middle-class home, a lot of focus on grades and school, tap dancing and, those kinds of things, being involved in that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of that going on, but I found out I was living in Disneyland, kind of. Because when I was about 8 years old, it all blew up. And my parents were good at hiding things, too. I mean, my father lost a prominent job with a Fortune 500. He was 35 and had a job that most guys 50 years old would love to have. He lost it due to indiscretion related to alcohol. He disappeared, went to live in his sister's basement, and we didn't see him then. He left. And this is a guy, who was buttoned up, articulate, well-dressed, played a couple instruments, went to work every day with a briefcase, and we had bad alcoholism brewing, and he crossed the line, and there he went. He went to live with his sister. At the same time, my mother was developing delusional paranoid schizophrenia. And she went from this, she was really like a mid-50s mom, like really dressed. She dressed in dresses. She happened to be a natural blonde Finnish woman, really, really great mom. Really great mom, and she turned from that into this brooding, dark, unkempt schizophrenic. She would sit in the front when my father's gone. She'd sit in the front window of the house and look out the window, and she really believed that the people were following her and watching her. They believed that there was a conspiracy. She believed that herself. And if I asked her what was going on when I was 7 years old, she would say, I can't tell you, because if I tell you, you're going to get hurt or something. It was that kind of weird boogie going on. Weird boogie. If she gets institutionalized, this is all within about 6-month period. I get my sisters-to-be, we go to live with my aunt on the farm. I'm an urban guy, and now I'm living on the farm up in northern Michigan. It was kind of cool because it was where my mother grew up. They built a church next door, where I was a Lutheran in Lutheran training for 13 years of my life. So I got to live on the farm. My aunt and uncle were very cool people. She'd sneak a cigarette now and then, and sneak out to bingo. But other than that, they didn't drink or anything. They were wonderful people. Like I had pet chickens, and I went from urban guy to having like a pet steer. And one day my steer, by the way, the one I raised, came home in the trunk, packaged up. No. He was okay. We knew he was good. We knew that was his fate. I didn't mean that. That's not why I became an alcoholic. That's not why I became an alcoholic. I knew that whatever his name was coming home in the trunk. Eventually. But from then, what happened was, then I spent time the next 12 years, or until I was 18 and went away to college, I spent alternating between the schizophrenic and the alcoholic. I've been to 12 schools in 12 years between the 1st and the 12th grade. We moved 13 times. In the 7th grade, I went to 3 schools. It was just crazy shit. Eviction, drinking, death, remarriage, no sexual abuse, no physical abuse, just crazy, weird shit, when you look back on it. And what I'm confident, as a note, both my parents, my dad lived out his life, a little white knuckle sobriety and then some good solid sobriety. And my mother today, she's had about 15 years of complete freedom from the schizophrenia due to a whole sequence of events. If you met her here, she's 95 now and doing real well. So there's some good stuff that comes with that. I wanted to leave you with that a little bit. But what I know is that this whole scenario produced in me a person who didn't trust anything, low trust, Not a lot of belief in people. I'm sure of that looking back. And I'm going to tell you at the time, though, I didn't know I was like that. I wasn't sitting around going, this is effed up, and those kids are better than me, and they got more than I do. I cannot remember that. And it could be it's suppressed or something, but I can just remember just kind of adapting and going on. And that's part of my story is I really didn't know I had the character defects. But I know I had some low self-esteem, and I know that, from the whole process, it produces a whole list of character defects. That thing that some of you carry around in your wallet with, like the character defects, and then, well, I had that list, a whole bunch of those in there. And it's not worth spending a lot of time on that, but I had those. Get my gratification now. I think I was really set up for some good mood-altering substances. Not knowing it, though. I'm just out there in the world doing that. Everybody's circumstances are different. I've met people in the program, young guys who think maybe, and women, who thought maybe they were pushed out into poor self-esteem by just bad grades in school and meeting a couple of the opposite sex that turned them down, and they get that. I've also met people in the program. I know a woman who's had people shot in her front yard when she was growing up. And you get your brain poop in your own way, but that's where, Glenn got his. I was introduced to mind-altering substances when I was about 13, and again, diet pills come back into the picture. A friend of mine's brother, he kind of looked like Frank Zappa. He gave me and my friend some of his mom's diet pills. And we stayed up all night and did what 13-year-old kids do, eat too much popcorn and stuff like that. But that set me off on that. And I did not have an aha moment. There was never anywhere in my youth that I had an aha moment where I all of a sudden went, now I'm good. Between the time I was 13 and the time I was 18, I've taken every drug on the planet except heroin and cocaine. I've had every form of hallucinogen, barbiturates, amphetamines, every form of smoke, hash, pot, Thai sticks, opium, even some organic stuff, mushrooms, cactus, throw some organic things in there. And on the extreme side, when I was youth, inhaling Freon and walking around with a piece of burlap and sniffing airplane glue out of a piece of burlap. And in the meantime, moving around and all that, but the good news was in there, the real good news is that I somehow aligned myself with people in school who were kind of the philosophical hippie type. So we'd take LSD and sit around with black posters and figure out how we're going to fix the world and stop the war and, and fix the man, and fix the man. But we were those people. We were those people. And so I had the good news was I still maintained some focus in school. When I was a young kid, I did some work around town as a techie guy. They call them roadies now, but it was a techie guy for some local bands. And that would keep me in the drug scene. Grandy Ballroom in the East Town and the places here in Detroit that were they were like malls for drugs. They were like malls for drugs. What I want to say, though, it's very important here is when I started using those drugs when I was 13 until later on in life, I never realized that I was using the drugs as a coping mechanism. I didn't realize that I was taking the drugs, to offset this brain poop I had going. I had my dials all set wrong, and I started using the mind-altering substances, and I'm sure they were just working together. But I was never walking around, even as an adult, I can't remember going, I feel bad, I'm going to go have some Vicodin. Or I feel bad, I'm going to go have some vodka, Vicodin, and weed. I can never remember any of that. I can't remember, I just used it. What I used to do became me. It became me. And now the living with addiction part. At some point I crossed the line. I'll tell you where I think that was. I went away to college. I had the great fortune of attending a great business school, a great graduate business school, and I went off into corporate land as a corporate guy, corporate finance guy. But that set me off on a life of 12-hour days and boozing and drugging in the cracks on weekends and in the evenings. But I managed to balance the thing out, so when I showed up at work, I was pretty crisp. I'm sure it could have been better, but I was. So I set off, both in school and in my work, hitting it real hard, and then in the evenings using my friend. But I never thought of it that way. I never thought like, this is hard work, and that's the danger in it. Because of my youth, I was fearless. As an adult, you could put anything in front of me. And so that's what it was like. And when I crossed the line, and I can tell you this for sure, and there's science out there on this as well, when I crossed the line, I lost my decision-making over it. And I'm sure you've all been there, where you were using it, and then all of a sudden, you just stopped making the decision over it. It's not bad anymore, it's just part of what you do, and that became me. I'd get up every day in the morning and I'd go, okay, it's going to be different today. I'm not going to drink or drug today. I'm not going to do it today. I'd go to work, put in some productive time, and then by 4 or 5 o'clock, I'd be thinking about it, and then I'd get out of work. My car would just drive to a bar, sometimes to a couple of bars, so they wouldn't think I was an alcoholic at any one bar. Maybe go to a couple bars. Then I'd end up at a Rite Aid parking lot, a Rite Aid store or something, and buy a bottle of vodka. I'd be drinking it in my car, but there would never be a thought in there as to, this is some stupid shit. There was never a thought about that. I cannot remember thinking, this is stupid shit, and then go home and take pills, watch a half of a movie. I've seen like 50 half movies. And I've seen probably another 50 full movies where I'll get 3/4 of the way through and I said, I've seen this. But it makes it rich, because now I get to see, anyway. So, but I'd start the next day. I'd start up another day, and I'd say, it was like Groundhog Day. I'd go, it's going to be different today, and I'd be at it again. I'd be in a parking lot of some store with a bottle of vodka, drinking out of the bottle of vodka. I'd go home and do stuff, watch a half a movie, and it became this awful cycle of things. And then came kind of the fear and the shame and guilt started to creep in. And then I started living a delusional life. I was living absolutely delusional, my thinking. And there was kind of maybe 4 forms of that. One was denial about it. And you hear a lot about that, but my favorite denial for me was, I told myself, the addict told myself, that all I needed to do was play the willpower card when I was ready. You hear willpower is not our issue, but it's a great tool when you're the addict. And I would use it, I would think, well, I'm going to stop when I'm ready. And so I would stop on December 31st, and I'd be back at it again on January 2nd, with the willpower card back in my wallet. And it was in serious denial. I would rationalize, like, what am I going to do? My friends, when I go to these corporate meetings or when I go to family parties, how am I going to not drink? But that was just the addict in me rationalizing that people didn't give a shit if I drank or not. That was all an illusion. And when I quit, nobody ever asked me. I mean, I had an occasional person offer it to me, but it was completely rationalizing all the time. I had to do this stuff to keep myself on top of things. Projecting. If those people would change, if the damn people in my business would change, maybe, I can remember sitting at home sometimes thinking, I wish those assholes would straighten up, if they just be a better corporate people, then, it would be easier to be a corporate person. And my favorite one is minimizing things, moving the bar. I have a young person who I've worked with in the program who told me, this has to do with not being that bad. He said he was strapped down to a thing, waiting for a room in the wing of an institution. Waiting for a room. And the nurse or whoever it was came up to him and said, "I think we got a room for you." I think we got a room for you. They wheel a guy out, and he told me this. I said, "Are you kidding?" He said, "No, this is the truth." They wheeled a guy out who was dead. And he thought to himself, "I'm not that bad. I'm not quite that bad." I mean, he'd lowered the bar to where in his mind, as long as he wasn't like right on the edge of death. But that's what we do. It was all delusional thinking. I was that person. I was living this delusion. It was crazy. So here's some examples. Here's a couple of good things. I have a friend named Mike C., who maybe some of you know who was in our Sunday meeting. He lives up in Fenton now. Well, Mike's been collecting what we call alkalogic that he hears in meetings. Great examples of delusional thinking. And I just want to share a couple with you. Here. This one said, this person, when they go to lunch, they always order 2 drinks immediately. That's to save the waitress some time. This person drinks because they like the taste of it. This is one of my favorite. One of my favorite ones. These couples go on vacation and they're in the Caribbean and they got these rooms side by side. And the guy they get done swimming. He walks in. He's washing in the bathroom. Takes off all his clothes and walks out into the room. And he's in the wrong room. And he's standing there with his friend's wife, with no pants on. And he said later on, his first thought that came to mind, I mean, he's snockered, he's totally blotto. And the first thing that came to mind is he needs to lose a little weight. That's some delusional stuff. This is, here's one. I only drink wine. I hate wine, so I know I can quit any time. Most people don't like me when I drink. That's okay, but I don't like them when I drink either. I mean, there's a whole host of he's got an entire thing he's putting together over time. Maybe he can publish. But these people really believe what they were saying at the time. In terms of what is addiction to me, in the bottom line, addiction is anything I do to fill my head with other than me. It's something to push me out of my head. I really believe that. I don't think of it consciously, but that's what I do. And you say, well, how is a gambler and me the same? The gambler and me as addicts are identical. Why? I've asked myself that. It's because the gambler is doing something so intense and so obsessive that they don't have to be themselves. It's pushed them out of their head. And I know that my drinking and drugging was doing that. I never thought of it that way, but looking back, I think it was like that. I think addiction to me is a lifestyle choice. It's actually kind of easy being an addict in some ways. I have a single focus. I do one thing. I focus on getting my drugs. I beat myself up about it. I don't have to do anything else. I don't take care of anything else. You might say, well, you feel bad when you're an addict and all that, but there's a lifestyle to it that I think you can be drawn to. I really believe that relapse is as much, in some cases, a desire for the lifestyle as it is for the drug itself. It's simplistic. It's mindless. It's destructive. But that was me. And so, how do you get back on the other side of the line? And now I'll talk to you about the recovery part. What gets you on the other side of the line? I'm, from a spiritual standpoint, if you ask me, what's your spiritual source, I would tell you Buddhism. I'm kind of Buddhist light. There's a few things that I, look to in the core of that is my spiritual source. But in my lifetime, there will be nothing like the miracle of my transformation from being a badly addicted person to where I am today. It's nothing short of a miracle. But it came by following advice and principles from outside of me. It took listening to a lot of people. Just as some background, a little bit of background, I was invited to go to my first AA meeting by my wife. She was attending Al-Anon already for like 9 months, had been going to a family group. And so I went to this AA meeting, this one I would go stoned. I tried to be respectably stoned so they wouldn't know, but they knew I was stoned. But I would go to this AA meeting, and I heard some really good stuff. The Mike C. guy, who I told you made up the Alcologicalist, he was one of the first people I ever met, and I heard some really good stuff. The one thing I heard was that I had to get outside of myself, because the addict in me would dictate a bad plan every time. You could not rely on coming up with something yourself. And for me, it was a miracle. How did I do it? In kind of a summary, inpatient, I did inpatient, outpatient, 90 meetings in 90 days, got a sponsor, worked the steps. And somewhere like 6 or 7 months out, I started to lose I woke up not thinking about drinking and drugging. The obsession started to leave me, and then I started to go to meetings on a regular basis. I still attend like 5 things a week. I do the family group out at Maple Grove and do a couple of other things, but I've made it so that I'm active in that. I'm going to group the steps together and kind of run down them for you. Step 1 we've already talked about. I admitted I was powerless, both genetic and psychologically, and I resigned myself to that. As far as steps 2 and 3, my whole family and me were running around, and all my friends were running around in this box together. Nobody knew about addiction. There was a group in the box with me that thought I was fine because they were all they were part of the gang I hung with. And then there were some people that were normies, and there were some people a lot of them just thought, hey buddy, get some willpower and cowboy up and, stop being a poopy head. Get yourself straightened out. And so somebody had to get out of the box, and the first person who did was my wife. She went out to Maple Grove and started in a program out there and was in there 9 months. And in that process started to disengage, started to do some other stuff. And that combined with an intervention got me to go into inpatient. But part of it was me resigning to do 100% of what they told me to do. I could not have like the side plan, the Glenn plan, because that would be easy for me to do. Okay, I'll be in rehab, but I'm going to smoke a joint, once a week, just as a reward. That would be easy for me to do. What I would like to do is share with you a few valuable lessons that I learned doing steps 4 through 7. And these are the things that keep me both humble and focused and keep my serenity today. And through step 4 through 7, I got a lot of emotional maturity as well. Number 1 is don't take things personally. The self-centered person will take just about anything that's said to you and turn it into something. Because of course it's about you. One great example is, I heard this person say, they have the person walk up and they go, nice shoes. The person just goes, nice shoes. And the person immediately says to himself, well, what does he know about shoes? Thinks the other person, I had good shoes on yesterday. When did he become an expert on shoes? Maybe I should get a whole room full of shoes like the ones I got on. And now he's got a shoe fetish and addiction going. And he said he could feel his mind go there. But we do that. We'll turn something like that. It was just a compliment. The person meant nice shoes. And even if they were trying to be a shoe expert, you don't have to give a shit about that. You don't have to give a shit. A young gal in the program, one of my favorite things ever said about this stuff, about taking stuff personally, she gets a new job. She's there for 8 months. She's wanting the boss to come in and say something nice about her work. She's waiting for this, and she knows she's doing a good job. So the boss walks in, the leader walks in and says, this is great stuff. And she doesn't believe him. She can't, she's going to play both sides of the card. And she said she didn't believe him, and it was one of my absolute favorite things. Number 2, in terms of lessons learned, turn off the ass-kicking machine. You know? You can go around looking for reasons why you're a shit. You know, why to validate your self-esteem stuff. One of my favorite examples comes from a young guy in the program. This is after he's sober. He drops the tray off the door in his refrigerator. It falls off, and he's got spaghetti sauce and garlic and, whatever, all over his floor. And he said he broke out laughing, kind of. He was able to laugh at it. And he said before, when he was in his addiction, he would have probably kicked that pile of stuff across the room, been calling himself a stupid shit, for the situation. And so he's let go of that. He's let go of those kind of situations. Turn off the ass-kicking machine. Don't take a pocket full of quarters out every day when you leave the house. A third lesson learned, don't be self-important. When you're important, the self-centered person then is the egotist too. Don't be so self-important. My niece will call me up and say, Uncle Glenn, would you help me move? The addicted, self-centered Glenn would go, of course I got to help her, because I'm the guy who knows how to move. I'm the guy who knows how to move. So I'm going to help her move. And I don't want to help her move. I've been moving people on and off for 30 years. And today, and what I did was, I was sober now, and I just said to her, I'd rather not. And she went, okay. And she went and found somebody else. I was just the easy target. But if you're not being so self-important, it's really easy. Weddings are like that. You'll get an invite for a wedding. You'll get this invite for a wedding, and I got to go to that wedding, because if I don't go to that wedding, the damn wedding won't be a wedding, or something in your mind. But I learned to just go, I barely know those people. I'll send them a gift. I'll give them a card, send them a gift, and they'll be happy. They'll be happy, and they'll say, oh, Glenn's not coming, Glenn and Karen aren't coming, and they'll go, okay. And they'll go on, and they'll be doing their thing. But in my mind, I think, okay, it's really important. Okay, another learning lesson that I've learned. Stay out of the way of other people's shit-nados. Those are shit tornadoes that other people bring into your space. And if you see one of those big shit-nados come by, you can just go like this. You can go, rather than diving in. I would dive in, and I would do my best to fix the shit-nado. We had to get a storm shelter and put everybody in it and feed everybody. And, you don't have to get involved in that. But the self-important, self-centered Glenn, you got to get in there, because what are they going to do without you? What are they going to do without you? And you got to put up with it. Another thing that's important, and I mentioned this at the table the other day, is if I have resentments, there's another lesson learned. If I have resentments and I'm being critical of other people, it's a high chance that it's just because it's a chance for me to be right. I'm being critical of them, and I'm carrying a resentment because they're not doing it my way. They're not listening to me. They're not applauding enough. They're just not with it. And I got it, and they don't. And so I resent them. And I think it's a matter of me just saying, I don't have to be right, and I don't have to win, and letting that go. That's been an important learning lesson for me. Setting boundaries with others, another one. In AA, we don't talk a lot about setting boundaries. And we don't talk a lot about it because if they did, then you'd have the addicts and alcoholics going, yeah, it's their fault, if they just get off my ass. So the program isn't designed that way, I don't think. But for example now, I have a sister that people bashes. When I have her over, she's reaming somebody out about the other people's kids and they don't dress them right, or so-and-so is a so-and-so, and we get that from her, and I ask her to please don't do that in the house because it affects my serenity I can't have that tension in the house. I think I told her I was involved in Buddhism now and it's a principle or something. I deferred that to something else, but that stopped. And she doesn't come over as often either, but that's okay. We're both better off. She probably found a codependent somewhere to be able to unload on. But I'm okay with that. So I think as addicts, we need to be able to set boundaries so that our environments are serene environments. and do whatever you need to do that. A couple more lessons learned. Learning to let go. Learning to let go of stuff. I mean, I can remember one time getting a ticket, and I was guilty, a speeding ticket. And I was like 60 and a 45, and he got me. But, you know, and this is when I was still addicted. I wasn't drunk at the time, fortunately. So I didn't get in trouble that way like DUI. But by the end of the week, I had a full-length motion picture in my head called The Ticket. You know, and there was the asshole police. There was, you know, the police, and there was the judge I might have to, you know, if I have to go and do the ticket and appeal the ticket. There were all those people in it. They were all the jerks. And I'm at the center of it, and I'm producing the full-length picture. You know, I got this thing called The Ticket in my head. I've taken, like, a ticket that I'm guilty for. And you know why? Because I like the obsession. I like that obsession. It's just that simple. I was guilty for that ticket, but I could turn it into that kind of thing. A couple other things. An important thing is be your own person. There's no role model for the ideal American person. There's a lot of different ways to do it. You can do your own thing. You don't have to pursue some model for and it's a lot easier doing your own thing and being happy what you're doing. And last, what I would say is for, in terms of lessons to learn, is overall, if I'm focused on the well-being of the group and not thinking of my own thing, then I'm winning, and I notice the group reacts a lot better to me. As I said once at the table, people don't need like a director, you know. I don't have to, every situation I'm in, be the director of the film. It says that in the book, like being the play director. But I was before, you know, if I'm in the room, you know, I got to be in control or I'm not happy or something like that. What is relapse to me? Relapse is me violating those things I just told you about, is slipping back into things, taking things personally, turning on the ass-kicking machine, you know, and being self-important and things like that. In terms of the other steps, I've got back with all the other people. I try to keep a fresh head about when I'm talking to people. When I walk in a situation, don't walk in with old Glenn, walk in with new Glenn. I try to keep the principles in front of me. That's step 11 for me. My prayer and meditation, I don't pray and meditate per se. I just try every day to be conscious about keeping the program things in front of me. I do this kind of thing once in a while, and giving back to others, sponsoring and being involved like that. That's the big winner, is doing that in some way. And I got to keep doing that. I'm about 8.5 years in recovery now, and things, they really do just keep getting better and better. And that's what I have for you. Thank you very much. Very nice.